Welcome to the Market Mystics podcast, where we discuss what's happening in the cryptosphere and trading on Earth as it is in heaven. Buckle up and huddle on while we dive in and get weird. Here are your hosts, Joshua and Kim.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to your Thursday with the Market Mystics. We've got a fun episode planned today. I suppose fun is relative depending on what your idea of fun is. But what's going on today, Kim?
Oh, well, I want to start with some market updates. You know how we always like to talk about this in the beginning. Bitcoin is down about 1% in the last 24 hours, down 7.6% in the last 7 days. Ethereum's down about 1/3% in 24 hours and almost 5% in 7 days. This one, so I started looking into a lot of this a little earlier today, and at 10 a.m., I saw that this coin, I guess I would pronounce it Xido, Xido. It was the number 66 coin. So I was looking for top 100. What's the biggest mover? It was up 86.2% in 24 hours,
Wow.
73.2% in the 7 days. However, now at 2 p.m., it knocked down to number 107, according to market cap, and is only up 1.1% in 24 hours and down 12% in the 7 days. So when we talk about volatility, this is a really great example of that, because this coin moved fast. I was like, wow, that is huge gain in 24 hours, 86%. And then a couple hours later, completely corrected already.
Yeah, I'm curious to know maybe a little bit about what happens with that, or what happened with that, because their chart literally looks like a table. I mean, it's just straight up, then it moves sideways for a bit, and then it's straight down. And depending on when you looked at it, it was like, wow, this is amazing. Or, there's so many different perspectives you might have taken. I mean, we even got one of the newsletters that we follow must have written sometime at the top, because it's like top headline was about how this coin was soaring. And then, by the time I read the newsletter, it had already crashed. And it was like, wow, like that's crypto for you.
It is. So welcome to the cryptosphere, where you never know what's going to happen from one moment to the next. What is inevitable, though, as we all know, is taxes.
Yes.
So we're going to talk a little bit about taxes today. We may be able to move on to some other topics as well, but we thought probably we ought to at least address it, because only about a week and a half is the deadline in the US to file your individual taxes. And this year, one of their top questions is about crypto.
Yes. There was, I believe it was on the 2020 taxes, they asked if you've purchased crypto. And on the 2021 taxes, they've asked, or have you sold crypto? And, they're just building a database of people who are involved in this ecosystem. And it's a way to help them keep you accountable on whether or not you're filing your taxes or not. So we just wanted to touch quickly on, we're not going to give you specific advice, but just kind of go over like what crypto tax is involved in, what you need to report, and then, maybe give you some resources so that you can do more of your own research. Again, we're not financial advisors or brokers. This is just our own opinions and research that we've done.
We are also not tax advisors.
That is also true.
I have a history with accounting, but I am not an accountant.
Yes. So really, there's one of the things I wanted to touch on was, what is a taxable event? And essentially, if you have sold, converted, spent, earned, or staked, those are taxable events. And I know, some of those are don't really make a lot of sense. Like there's some people who are like, well, if I just converted from Bitcoin to Ethereum, why do I need to claim that on your taxes? Well, the IRS views it a bit like earning money and then purchasing a vehicle with it. You're changing the type of asset that it is, and there is either a gain or a loss associated with the first piece of that. So maybe you bought Bitcoin, it went up, now you're transferring it to Ethereum. Well, that increase during the first while you had Bitcoin, that's the taxable event portion of it. And so there's just a few things like that that, you really need to keep your mind aware of, so that when you're recording it, some platforms do a really good job of giving you a printout at the end of the year of your transactions. Some of them do not do a very good job, and it's really up to you to report all of your transactions that are taxable events, and so you need to have good record keeping.
This is so true. And honestly, I'm skipping ahead here, but there are a lot of services out there that you can go look at that will connect to your wallets. They connect to different exchanges, and they can pull all of the information from the transactions you've made and compile tax reports for you, which could be super helpful, especially if you're using more than one platform. If you are merely on one platform, you only make a couple of buys, a couple of sells a year, it's going to be pretty easy to compile your information you need. If you use different platforms, which honestly I do,
Hmm.
it can be a lot more complicated, because even just the way that they keep track of your transactions and give you the information is so different. So there are a lot of these services out here. I don't even want to talk about them because I can't endorse anybody. I've not used them, but they're just popping up everywhere this tax season, that will connect to your wallets, and they'll pull the information from the transactions, convert it into something that you can even upload into TurboTax or send to your CPA to be able to hopefully, I would say hopefully accurately report all of your taxable events with crypto.
Yeah. And all of those sort of range from free trials or $50 for minimal transactions to I've seen a couple of them that are maybe $1,000 if you have a bunch of different platforms and you're trading constantly. Um, but it's definitely something that I would recommend you doing research on and finding what fits you. Um, we've in the past, Kim and I have kept detailed trading logs that we update every transaction we make. But the more transactions that you have, the harder it is to really uh, to do that. And having a platform that does that for you, and then at the end, really tracks your profit and loss on each trade. That's important to have. And one of
Mhm.
the other aspects of that is just even how long you've had the trade. Like just purchasing crypto isn't a taxable event. And that crypto going up and down in value is not a taxable event. But when you sell it, if you've had it less than 12 months, then it goes as a capital gains. But if you've had it more than that, it's an ordinary income. And you have to understand which one that was. And
Mhm.
it can be tricky sometimes because, here's just an example, but let's say you bought like 100 coins of one type of a crypto. And at some point in the year, you sold 50% of them, but you held the other 50% over a year. Well, then, you have to really track that because half of that transaction was one type of tax and half of that transaction is a different type of tax. And so, I really, first of all, you definitely need to have a good record keep track of your transactions. But second of all, I think it would be beneficial to look into some of these programs that are really designed to do it for you.
Mhm. Yep. Do your own research. Find what's going to work for you at a price point that's going to work for you. Again, we don't have experience with them. We were just looking into them today and got some insight into what these different things are offering. I mean, even some exchanges are offering the same type of services. I know crypto.com has a tax service. I guess you could call it a tax service, like an additional platform that does the same kind of thing. You can connect your wallets from different exchanges. It will pull the information from your transactions, compile a report for you to be able to report to the IRS. Now,
Mm,
if you're in a different country, some, all, or none of this might apply to you. It all has
true.
to do with how your country is regulating your tax system, and especially with crypto. And we know that regulation is just coming down the pike right now. It, I mean, we're on the verge, the precipice of regulation globally being rolled out. And so some countries may have it down pat, it is solid. Others, it's a little more undefined. So again, this is not tax advice, except that you need to get with someone who knows your tax system well and can help guide you through this, unless you are that tax professional, or unless you do ample research and you're confident in how to report in your own country.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to touch on was NFTs, because we often talk about NFTs and our love of NFTs and how we think the future will use them all the more. But there's a couple things to note. So for taxes for NFTs, if you purchased an NFT with cash, if you minted an NFT, or if you held an NFT that you created, those are not taxable events because you've not encountered any profit or loss from those. However, if you've purchased an NFT with crypto, that is a taxable event. It's exactly the same as the swapping Bitcoin for Ethereum. You're swapping two different asset types, and there's going to be a gain or a loss associated with the first transaction. And so that that's something to keep in mind, especially because the largest NFT platform, OpenSea, there's not really a purchase from cash. You're purchasing with Ethereum or
Mhm.
Polygon or maybe Solana now if it's up and running. And so that's certainly something to keep in mind from that perspective. The other thing is if you have minted NFTs and then you sell those, of course, that's a taxable event. So there's just a few things to keep in mind when it's not just crypto, but there's lots of things. Like Kim mentioned, this is a relatively new market, and regulation is slowly building, slowly coming our way. And so the record keeping is just all the more important, because who knows, when we get ready to file 2022 taxes in a year, what exactly all information will be required at that time.
Right, right. With that, I mean, looking forward to next year. So we're almost to the point of deadlines for taxes for this year, but preparing for next year so you don't have to scramble. I will say it's difficult to try to compile a lot of information from a lot of transactions if you do it at the end of the year.
Right.
So to be amply prepared for next year, you might want to start looking into something that can be tracking this as you're going. So you don't have to scramble at the end of next year to do it. Um, I had something else I was going to say and now I've lost it. So
Yeah. No, I think that's wise. Record keeping for this year, either on your own detailed record keeping or finding a program that will do it for you. I mean, ultimately, in my mind, having a program that'll do it for you is going to be the easier route. It may cost you a little bit of money, but at the end of the year, to know that you have all of your transactions recorded properly, and you can either, upload those to TurboTax or your own whatever tax software you use, or give it to your CPA. I mean, that's a big weight off your shoulder, because uh, there is just there's an importance in knowing what your taxes are, because if the IRS starts coming knocking at your door, they're gonna they're going to find things you may have forgotten about.
Yeah, true. Okay. So, with all of this tax talk, I do want to make a recommendation just because I found they have good information. They have great resources. So, Coinbase, which we've talked about many times, it's the largest exchange in the US that we have access to. I also think it's still the number two exchange globally. Is that accurate? I don't
I'm
know.
not sure.
It
Let me look.
was, but it's kind of one of the bigger exchanges. They have coinbase.com/learn has a lot of information about tax season, how to prepare, how best to get your information together, what to consider for next year. Just a great resources. So if I can recommend anything, that might be a good place to start your own research and
For
kind of
sure.
branch off from there. Or you
Yeah,
can use Google. I mean, whatever floats your boat. But I found there to be a lot of good information on Coinbase.
yeah, it's helpful when you have, with Coinbase being the largest American exchange, and they're also the oldest that I'm aware of.
Mhm.
Like they've been through this rodeo for quite a few years, and they have a reputation, and they're if they're going to publish something, they're going to do the best of their ability to make sure that it's accurate information before you really uh, before you take that in. So I think Coinbase Learn is an excellent resource uh, to really look into your taxes and what you need to know.
Absolutely. Also, breaking news. This just hot off the presses. Coinbase is now the fourth largest exchange in the world, second in the US. Crypto.com has taken the number one spot in the US and by quite a bit.
By a hefty amount, yeah.
Yes. Um, that's new news to us, obviously, because we were just thinking that it was number two in the world and number one in the US. And no
Yeah,
longer is
by
that the case.
Crypto.com has passed them by about 1.3 billion, which is a pretty substantial
That's
amount.
significant when Coinbase's total volume is 2.8
Yeah.
billion. So that difference is pretty hefty.
Oh, look at Crypto.com go.
Look at
It's
them
probably
go.
it's probably because we've talked about them on the show.
I mean, we do have a lot of influence,
Yes.
obviously. I'm sure it
Yeah.
has nothing to do with all of their marketing um, attempts and efforts. I'm sure it
Yeah.
has nothing to do with it.
Right.
Okay, what else is going on in the cryptosphere?
Oh, there's all sorts of stuff going on. It's been, I mean, as we've talked about today, everything's uh sort of down uh compared to where it was a week ago. And so, yeah, there's lots of things. Uh where do you want to move to next?
Let's talk about some blockchain breaches.
Let's do it.
It's cringy, but let's talk about it anyway. Because one of the benefits always talked about with blockchain is how much more secure it is than normal networks and just even the normal internet. But in the first quarter of this year, we have already had 78 attacks on the blockchain that have resulted in nearly $1.3 billion worth of losses.
Yeah, that's pretty substantial.
That is very substantial. Um, so the bulk of the figure was from attacks on the ecosystems of Ethereum and Solana, which those are two of the largest networks. So I guess I'm not horribly surprised, but also you kind of don't want to see that.
Right.
Um, So let's start with Ethereum. There have been 18 attacks on Ethereum in the first quarter of this year, and that was accounted for nearly $636 million of losses. The biggest one happened last week. It was kind of breaking news last week that I was catching a whiff of, and it was with Axie Infinity, which is one of the metaverse gaming platforms.
Mm-hmm.
They experienced a security breach, and attackers stole 173,600 Ethereum and 25.5 million USDC, worth an incredible $610 million from
Wow.
one breach on Axie Infinity. If you look at their numbers over the last week, they're down, but not as significantly. I mean, their value is down, but not as significantly as you would think after news of such a breach.
Mm-hmm.
They've kind of held pretty strongly through that, which I think says a lot about who they are and the, I don't know, the strength that they have behind them.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I think would be interesting to know about some of these hacks is, like previously, one of the largest hacks has been referred to as the Mount Gox hack. And it's because that was the platform that was hacked. And so, it was an attack on the blockchain, but a, it was through an exchange that was accessing the blockchain.
Mm,
And so I would be curious to know, out of the 78 attacks that have happened this quarter, how many of those were like direct on the blockchain, or how many of those were uh, through a third party, platform that was interacting with it. And ultimately, it doesn't matter. I mean, if you lose your money, you lose your money. But to some extent, it does matter because it's really showing you which exchanges have the proper security, which, and how they're protecting your information and your passwords and your wallet addresses. I mean, that's a big
right.
deal.
It
With
really is.
I'm just thinking, my head with crypto.com moving up so quickly in the ranks, like, is it going to make them a target for attempted hacks? I'm sure they've had attempted hacks before. Maybe they've had actual hacks before. Um, but, if they're doing a good job protecting your information, that says a lot about, the platforms. And so I'd really be
Mm,
interested to know some of that of, what's been, how have the attacks gone through? Like, what's the
sure.
medium for it?
I believe there was an attack on crypto.com. Um,
A while back.
yeah, I feel like it was even this quarter. It was, I'm looking at a headline, January 20th, 2022, two-factor authentication compromise led to $34 million of worth of a crypto.com hack.
Hmm.
Um, which honestly, compared to some of the other things we're seeing, is fairly small.
Yeah.
But that again, there shows it was through an exchange, and it was through a lack of security on the login side of
Hmm.
things and not necessarily the blockchain.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so moving on with breaches, there were 18 Ethereum attacks, which amounted to about $636 million. Solana, their ecosystem suffered 5 hacks that combined to a total of $397 million.
Wow.
Um, the Binance Smart Chain ecosystem got hacked 14 times, which resulted in about $100 million in losses. But they're saying NFTs were the top target among cyber criminals, with 20 hacks and nearly $49 million in losses. We have heard about some of these. We've heard about some even like Bored Apes that
Hmm.
got hacked and stolen from wallets. Um, I the response has been mixed, some sympathy and some like cold-hearted.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
It's so interesting to me when we're talking about NFT hacks or even crypto hacks in general, because when the money is moved or the NFT is moved, that's recorded on the blockchain and they
Mhm.
know what address it goes to. And I mean, you may not be able to readily identify that wallet and get your what you may think is properly yours back, but also um, you know where it is and you can see if it's been moved. And there is that does offer a layer of something that normal fiat does not have. The blockchain, even with its hacks, still provides some level of protection. I'd be curious, now that I'm thinking about comparing it with fiat, I'd be curious how many hacks on traditional banking systems there have been in the first quarter. And, we talk about blockchain because we're a crypto podcast,
Right.
but, it doesn't mean that uh, it gets a lot of news because it's new and people love to hate on things that are new. But I'd be curious, what it was with just normal fiat because I'm sure there were some. I mean, maybe not as much. We're talking about over $1 billion worth of crypto, and maybe that's not the same with fiat. But I'm sure there was something.
Yeah. I did a quick search and now Google knows me and only gives me crypto results. So I can't even speak to that, but I can speak to the increase in these blockchain hacks from quarter one last year of 2021. There were 33 breaches. Quarter one of 2022, there were 78 breaches. So it's quite an increase, like over 100% increase from year over year. But I
Yeah.
think I mean, if we didn't expect this to ever happen, I think we're a bit naive. Um, just that as technology advances, so do hackers. I mean, so do the ways to get around it and cheat the systems. It's not a pretty side of things, but it just kind of is how things
A
go.
reality. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. What else? You want to update us on Terra?
Yeah. Yeah. So I know we have talked about Terra or uh, many times on in this show just because it's a fond project of ours that we like to support. And a while back, we talked about how they had purchased around $1 billion worth of crypto and how that was meant to sort of be a reserve for the stable coin that they're building. But they've now purchased or are planning to purchase another 100 million in AVAX. And so they're moving out from their own ecosystem. They're gaining reserves in other cryptos, notably Bitcoin, but now also in Avalanche, which to me is very telling because Avalanche and Ethereum are close competitors, maybe not in market cap, but in the way they're built in their ecosystem. They're close competitors. And for Luna to choose Avalanche over Ethereum, I think says a lot about what they believe in the future of crypto.
Absolutely. I think it's notable too. I mean, they're investing what they're doing for the reserves, or they're investing in two really large, strong coins. So,
Yeah.
Bitcoin, the number one coin, it's kind of the coin that everything else is measured against. Um, but also, AVAX is the number 10 coin, and it has just been, I would say, quietly moving up in the ranks and gaining momentum and gaining backing. And it is a strong coin. And
Mhm.
I like seeing that But also you look at Terra, so Terra is a company that owns Luna and the UST coin, which is their stable coin. But Luna is at the number 8 position and their stable coin is at the number 14 position. So this could be quite the hard hitting stable coin once all of the backing and reserves are purchased and in place. We say this often, but I just think they're a company to watch in the cryptosphere. I'm not saying invest in them, but watch what they're doing because they're making some big, very strategic moves that I think could really change the game for stable coins, at least.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's for sure something to keep your eye on. They're quietly, well, not even quietly, they're making some big moves. And with their, with their stable coin being as popular as it is, I don't think it'll be too long before it really moves up into position with some of the other stable coins once it's being utilized on other networks as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, last thing today. So the top influencer, I would say, for cryptocurrency has been Elon Musk. And he has been kind of quiet for a while.
It's true.
But all of a sudden this week, like he reemerges, didn't even say anything about crypto, but still influenced the markets. You want to talk
Yeah.
about this, Josh?
Yeah. So this week, there was a filing that was found where Elon purchased 9% of Twitter, which, according to my research, is actually a majority stake in Twitter.
It is.
So, I mean, that's a significant deal. Gives him, position on the board, a little bit of, I don't know, control, but influence in how Twitter is handled.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big deal because he uses Twitter regularly, but he's not afraid to point out where Twitter is lacking in its ability to regulate things.
Mm-hmm.
And so for him to take a big purchase of is notable because he's also tossed around the idea of creating his own platform. Well, to me, this sounds like he's sort of saying, "Hey, I'm not going to create my own platform. We're just going to renovate something that already exists." But with his purchase, and I don't even think he said anything about it, but Doge went wild. It just was acting like an excited little puppy and running all over the place. So with his purchase, Doge went up nearly 20% in a day and then back down the very next day. And so I don't know if people thought he was going to make some announcement regarding Doge or, what exactly the reason was, but there were some investors that got pretty excited about Dogecoin and then the next day realized, oh, maybe this was misplaced.
It's so funny. I think it's wild that he can have such an influence that he didn't even have. He didn't put the news out. It was found out that he made this purchase. But just news coming out about Elon makes Doge move.
Yeah.
It's like an excited little dog who gets excited to see his master or something.
Uh-huh.
It's wild.
That's pretty funny.
Oh, on that note, I think we're going to wrap it up for today. I appreciate you joining us. We'll see you next week. Have a great weekend.
All the things.
All the things.
See you guys.
Thank you for listening. Join us every Monday and Thursday as we discuss trading on earth as it is in heaven. If you want to connect further, follow us on social media at market.mystics for Instagram and TikTok, and search for Market Mystics on YouTube and Facebook. If you still need more, follow the link on Facebook to book a coaching appointment. Until next time, see ya.